I'm gonna assume the audio is good. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Thanks for coming today, guys. This is the second of the ankle seminar series. We were thinking of doing 3, but I think 2 is a good cutoff point. Today we're gonna go through some exercises for some specific limitations and also conditions. What I'm gonna ask from you guys is just if you have any questions, I'm gonna address them all at the end, but please ask them through the chat. If you want to remain anonymous, you can also send me an email at najihismailpt@gmail.com. So the spelling of that is najihismailpt@gmail.com. Again, it's najihismailpt@gmail.com. I'll also be sending just a bit of a follow-up email and a thank you to you guys. So from my personal email, that same email. So if you guys didn't get a chance to write it down, you'll also be getting something from me from there. So we're just gonna wait a little bit before we get started. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. I'm just gonna do a bit of setup here. So I know that in the last seminar of the seminar, we went through kind of just talking through some conditions, range of motion, balance, kind of some deficits that are there. So now I want to go through some of the things I would prescribe and that would be helpful with addressing those things. What we're not going to have a chance to cover today is some of the treatments that you would get if you were to come in, but what that would look like would be, excuse me, what that would look like would be, if your, for example, joint had limited range of motion and it was at the front of the ankle here, if it was limited going this way, for example, or going that into plantar flexion here or there, I'm really testing my balance here, we'd do some hands-on mobilization to try to get it into there, and we'd be doing what's called joint mobilization. So what that would entail would be following along the way the ankle joint moves, and then moving into there, gradually helping to increase your range of motion so the ankle gets looser. And then once we open that passive mobility up, then we would be working in towards strengthening it or getting you to move that ankle or whatever case, wherever you're kind of at. Again, a lot of times with acute ankle injuries like a sprain or even after a surgery or a fracture, you'll have a lot of swelling. So those beginner exercises where you're doing circles and that sort of thing, which I'll start with first, will be really helpful in getting the ankle moving better, but also increasing range of motion. So I'll start with those. Again, just want to reiterate, if you guys have questions along the way, just feel free to ask them in the chat. So again, last time I was mentioning that the main actions of the ankle are going downwards, plantar flexion, coming upwards, dorsiflexion, inversion, and eversion. And those combine and do a bunch of different movements. But let's say, for example, you're limited, you have some swelling in the ankle after an acute injury or after a fracture. What you could do, some options are some ankle circles. So you'd really just be trying to go in the full range of the ankle. And if you were to come in, let's say you're limited in this motion coming upwards and coming out to the side, you'd find this outer position to be especially difficult. So we'd really want to focus on opening that up with some manual therapy or acupuncture or that sort of thing. And then when you're doing these circles, really focus on making sure you're getting into there and opening that up. And you want to go in both directions. This also helps to improve what's known as proprioception, which is your sense of like knowing where your joint is in space. So what can happen is sometimes you won't really have a good sense of what your ankle feels like, or it'll feel off, or it'll feel heavy. So things like this, or also balance exercises will help. Another thing that's helpful in the beginning stages would be something just in sitting on the ground here. So first you could go with an exercise like ankle pumps, so just getting the ankle moving up and down. So what this is helping with is just getting more blood flow into there, but also beginning to strengthen those muscles as well. And really you want to squeeze the calf muscle at the bottom here when you're working it, and that's really what's going to help pump that fluid out and going up and down. In this position too, a lot of times this motion of the ankle dorsiflexion gets tight, so what you can do is either be stretching it like this, or taking a towel, or if you have one of these laying around at home, coming into there and just stretching that until you get a comfortable stretch. Stretches typically you want to hold 20 to 30 seconds, doing them as needed through the day. So let's say you had some really tight calves after a sprain, or it's been immobilized in a boot after you broke it, or that sort of thing. You're just you want to do this stretch, multiple times through the day, 3 to 5 times. The more typically with the stretches, especially in the early phases, the more you do it, and with those other exercises as well, the better. And then let's say from there, now the foot's starting to feel stronger, you could use one of these bands again and start going into some early strengthening exercises. So for plantar flexion, that downward motion, you could be pulling downwards and just going into resistance. The harder you pull, the more difficult it is. You could also go into then strengthening. You could tie it to something on the side, on either side here or there. Let's say you want to strengthen the motion going out to this way, E version. You'd want to be going that way. So let's say you had a ankle. So let's do this way, or you could go in this way, right? So let's say you had a ankle sprain. So typical mechanism of injury you see with most ankle sprains is the foot coming in like this, where it's that inversion. So let's say you land and you kind of fall funny, and you really would be spraining the ligaments here. You can sometimes sprain the inner ligaments, and that does happen, but it's much more common to go in this way. So you'd see some swelling, which those exercises before would help with. But also you'd want to start working on that range of motion like I was showing with circles. You could do those movements as well, and then getting into the band exercises. The one exercise I didn't show was the one for dorsiflexion, but you could just tie it to something or tie it around, banister or something just heavy enough that you can get good resistance. Make a loop. Get it around the top of the foot, and you would just be going into the resistance like that. And you're trying to squeeze the muscles up along here. So again, if you guys have questions about what I've been going through so far, if you just joined and you didn't hear, please just leave your questions in the chat below. I'm going to be addressing them more at the end. And if you want to be anonymous and you can send an email to me. I'm going to reiterate my email at the end, but it's my first and last name, pt@gmail.com, Najih, pt@gmail.com. Move this to the side here. So now we went through some early range of motion exercises, some band-based stuff. So let's go advancing a bit more with the exercises. So now we want to do stuff that's just in standing, no weights yet. So really easy one you can do at home or anywhere is working on your single leg balance, right? This will be important in a majority of ankle injuries because, if your ankle doesn't have good stability, then really anything you want to do, whether it's sports, cutting, jumping, if you injured yourself landing, right, spraining the ankle, or if you fractured, any of that sort of thing, you want your balance to be really good because it's going to be your base of support for those sorts of things. So start off with just single leg balance, then you can begin to start making it a bit more challenging. Sorry if I'm out of breath. So you can start moving the opposite foot. So you could do what's known as a Y exercise, where you're going like this, just drawing a Y. You can make a square. So really the emphasis is just about going to different positions. You can, even if you want to be doing different things and just switching it up, just depending what stage of rehab you're at, what your goals are, right? Another thing that's important, especially if you're doing a lot of pivoting, is working on rotation, right? So this rotating here, these muscles really working and having a good firm base of support. So you could work on some just planting the foot and just trying to work on rotating, rotating. Um, One area of that, last time I was telling you guys about was connecting the feet and the ankle and how the foot, ankle, and knees connected. Sorry, right? So you also want to work on in a lot of injuries, especially if you had chronic ankle injuries and you're like, how come I've been doing like similar exercises and they haven't been helpful? Then you want to look above or below, right? So if the foot has issue, let's say a lot of people come and they're like, I have flat feet. I've tried orthotics, they help, or they might not help, but they haven't tried strengthening the foot itself. So what you could do is then work on strengthening the muscles of the arch itself. So even myself, I've been working on it. Hopefully the arch looks okay. Looks good to me, but I'm biased. Right. So these muscles are one of the big ones that helps is that tib post, which runs along back here, and that's also involved in that inward motion, and it helps to keep the arch from like collapsing in and being flat, right? So if you're like doing stuff, you're jumping and you're always flat coming in, you kind of have that moment of instability where it's coming down versus if you come down and your feet muscles are strong, you can maintain that arch, right? So before going into all that, you'd want to just do stuff where you're strengthening those. So if you want to strengthen the ones at the bottom of the foot and they come down the calf and insert to the toes, you could grab something like a towel or this sort of like that, and just do some scrunches. So you're just pulling it towards you, working on doing things like that. So you're just building dexterity there. Sometimes if you haven't been doing these, the bottom of the foot can cramp, but as you keep working on it, that cramping will reduce, and that cramping is a sign that you probably want to work on these because muscles are weak enough that they're seizing up cramping while you're doing this, so that'll help strengthen the bottom. Then you would want to work on isolating movement of the toes. So if you guys even try it right now, you might think it's easy to just lift just one, the big toe, and then the other toes, but it's actually harder than it looks, especially to do it controlled. And when you're doing these, you want to try to maintain the arch there as well. So this would be toe yoga, where you're the four toes to the side, big toe. And then you could also, other things you could do as well to strengthen the foot if you wanted to strengthen those things. Let's say you were someone who has, a lot of times when we prescribe this, it's because the feet muscles are weak, right? So people are usually able to get this one down, but they're trying to do this and all the toes are moving together, or they can't lift the big toe, or they're able to lift the big toe, but when they're trying to do the other ones, they won't come up. So what you can do to assist that, and what we would be working on with you is, okay, so let's say your issue is lifting, you can't get this to work on its own. So you could pin this foot down. So it's like if these were all coming up, you would assist this with being held down. So let's say I'm doing 50% of the pressure from my hand and 50% coming from my toe being held down. You want to try to gradually increase that, right? So let's say you're working on it day to day. It takes about like 3 to 4 weeks for you to make changes in your nervous system so that you're able to actually do this and it doesn't feel like impossible. But what you can do is, let's say on a Monday you start doing it, you're doing 50-50. Then by Thursday, you're trying to gradually decrease how much your hand's doing and increase how much your toes doing until you can just do it actively. So usually the toe is a bit easier. And then same thing if these ones keep coming up when you're lifting the these ones keep coming up. Sorry, the big toe keeps coming up when you lift the other toes. No, I got that mixed up. If you're lifting the big toe and these are coming up, you can do the same thing and help keep those down. Or if you're having an issue with the lifting itself, you can also apply that same premise and be lifting up, helping with lifting up. And you're just doing 3 to 5 second holds. Really just trying to do this daily so you can get those changes. And once you're able to do that, I'm not the greatest at toe pianos, but it would be lifting one at a time and then putting down one at a time. It takes a lot of thinking. Actually struggling a bit, I won't lie. The pinky still needs some work, but that would be that. So I know that was a bit off topic, seemed a bit off topic from the ankle, but the foot is, the foundation even more so than the ankle. So that's one way that you can really, sorry, my foot's tired and I'm out of breath from thinking a lot. But that's one way that you can kind of work on those things. So let's go back to the ankle. So again, let's say you want to work on this sort of motion with getting up on the tiptoes. Let's say you're doing calf raises. That looks good. You can go to your first step. I'm using this as a step. And then start working on what's called the eccentric, which would be the lowering. So you could work with just controlling it on 2. And this eccentric is really important for strengthening the tendons especially, but just working on having good control of the ankle in general. If going up on 2 and down on 2 is okay, then you could go up on 2 and down on 1. Oops. Yes, I need to work on this clearly. Up on 2, down on 1. You can also go up on 1, down on 1. So there's 2 ways you want to be working on your calf raises. You want to be doing it with the knee straight, which will get one set of muscles, but you also want to be doing it with the knee slightly bent so that you're getting the other set of calf muscles in there. So for myself, for example, probably need to work on this a bit more, but it would be, something like that. So why that would be relevant, let's say, you're cutting, turning, your legs planted, twisted, and you're kind of using a lot of those components we were talking about earlier. Or if you're jumping, right, you're at the end, right before you jump, you're there. So it's really important in that, if you're jumping for a rebound or something in basketball, you're going to a bit of a squat position, which is important, so it's good to have this dorsiflexion range, and you can come up. So it's really like, and the landing, you want to have, really strong feet, arches, ankles, and then that's going to go into, other areas as well. But just going on the ankle, especially, let's say you're coming from more elevated surface, right? So let's say we're in the later stages of rehabbing, right? You had like ankle sprain and you're into playing a sport where you're doing a lot of jumping, a lot of landing. You did the range of motion stuff where and got the swelling down. Basic strength is good. Then we're going to work on sport specific stuff. So you could be working on landing. You could come down on 2 feet, come down on 1 feet. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to come down on 1, but the idea would be the same on both. Land, and then you come in. Try not to let the knee cave in too much. That'll go into like knee-based stuff, but just to protect the knee in general. Try to maintain the arch when you land, slight bend. Let's say you want to work on power as well. You could then go from here, add a jump, or there's a lot of variations you can do, but really what's important with the landing is, let's say we go on 2, right? Sticking the landing, being in control, being firm, really controlling that landing, not having a landing where you're like kind of like wobbly, your ankles going in different places, right? It's like you're trying to practice in a controlled setting, really being, and you're thinking about these things a lot. You want to have it nailed down, because when you're playing sports, you're not just thinking about nothing. Or let's say you're even someone who just sprains their ankle and you're just like kind of coming down from a curb. Maybe you don't have to come from something this high, but you're coming from a step that's a little lower, and you would be rather come from here, coming from there, and working on just controlling, so that if you're coming down from a curb or a step, you at least are able to control what's relevant for you, right? So, and then because when you get these injuries, you're not thinking, hey, I was thinking so much about my ankle. You're just living your life, and that's when these things happen. So you want to get the body so used to being in control that when you're not thinking about it, it's able to keep you safe and minimize your risk of injury. I have some other toys here that I'm gonna just rush through, but really other options that you have for like challenging your balance would be those same balance exercises you could do on a like foam or less solid surface. So you could do the, the Ys. You can also go into one that I didn't do earlier, which is doing like a hip hinge motion, which can be helpful, which is relevant as well. Or you can do single leg squat. Let's say your balance isn't as great on here. You can then kind of do a kickstand version of these where you just have like maybe 20% of your weight on here, and you're able to really work this leg, which would then be able to progress to doing it just on one. Same idea on this. This is just a different unstable surface. So you have many ways that you can play around. If you're more into trying to work on your sprinting, getting really solid, this will get into engaging glutes, which you need a really good firm support and base at the bottom so that you're able to engage the glutes and core, which is enough to have a whole other discussion. In terms of one thing I almost forgot to touch on is working the tib post and calf raises, which is important for maintaining the arch as well and just overall stability of the foot. This is a muscle that tends to be weak and is why you kind of collapse in, have those flat feet or the ankles inverting. You're getting those sprains because you don't have that stability. You just be squeezing a block here. You're trying to imagine you're engaging a muscle in and along there. So you have this like that. Or you can also do it with, if you don't have any equipment like this, you can use a ball, or even if you just have your feet like this and you're imagining you're turning these on, have it in there. And slipping. The one day I put on lotion, it's working against me. You're in there. Doing things of that nature. Things that I won't have time to touch upon are if you are doing some of those same balance exercises, you tie something around like a solid surface. So you'd have the band tied to something, and then you loop it around your leg. So it'd be pulling. You could have tension pulling you this way, pulling you this way. Those are usually the directions you want to go depending on which muscles you're trying to strengthen. So it'd be either pulling you a lot that way or like so. But again, it really depends what kind of issue you sort of have. So, if you're an Achilles tendonitis, then your issues are more so the tendon isn't strong, muscles aren't strong. So you want to work on, making sure you have that range of motion. But then it's really about strengthening, about making sure the ankle's stable so that the calf muscles don't have to do all the work of stabilizing the ankle. If you're post fracture or post surgery or post sprain and you have a lot of swelling, you're doing those early exercises with the range of motion, the getting it up and down, and then using something like a band or a towel where you're strengthening while you're laying down, and then getting into more, balance, calf raises, that sort of thing, just to make sure ankle is up to par and you mitigate your future risk of injury. Because one of the biggest risk factors for injuries is having that same injury in the past, especially with things like ankle sprains. That's all I have for you guys today. Now I just want to give time for answering some questions. So I'll take this here, go selfie mode. Sorry. Okay, guys. Let me see how to get the questions going. I hope this was engaging in what you guys were kind of looking for. I hope if there's anything that you guys felt wasn't covered and you want to ask me some questions, please just leave something in the chat or give us an email shout. Let's try and figure out open comments if there is. I'm not seeing how to open the comments. One sec. Maybe there's just no comments then if I'm clicking. I think there's just nothing there. Cool. So I'll just be, if you guys have any questions, just let me know. That was all I had to share for you guys today. thanks for the people who joined. Appreciate your time. So in terms of that, um, really, it's really independent and depends on you. It's easiest if you're working with someone and they've been tracking your progress, but you want to just make sure you're achieving the milestone that you're trying to work towards with that exercise or that sort of thing. And so let's say you're working with myself or one of the team at Rehab Hero, right? You're coming in and you've been kind of meeting these checkpoints and you're working towards your goals and you get that range of motion back. Okay, you're good to go with the next exercise, right? So it's really helpful to have someone there with you helping you figure out what exercises are good for you. And it ties into all the other stuff that I was mentioning at the start with the manual therapy and the hands-on, us helping you get that range of motion or that mobility or feeling comfortable or that the tightness in your legs is down, and then also let's say you're looking for some more ideas or exercises. We also have a bunch on our exercise library or Instagram that you can check out. And really, if you go to the exercise library, especially, and you type in ankle sprain or ankle injury or the specific muscle, you'll be able to find a bunch of things there. Yeah, I'm gonna do another check question. I don't think this. The sets and reps are very variable for everyone, so you'd really have to come see somebody to get those specifically, right? And it depends on the acute nature of the injury, what exercise it is. Some are time based, some are repetition based. So you have to get that prescribed to you for me to answer that specifically. Yeah. And then again, if anyone has any questions and they want to share it by email, email is najih@gmail.com for a full sprain to recover. Full sprain, I mean, depends what a full sprain is, but if no ligaments are torn, can be up to 2 to 3 months. Um, but really depends on age, severity of the injury, mechanism of injury. If you're still using the affected area, but yeah, sprain to fully recover. Yeah. So thanks, guys. I'm gonna cut it here. Appreciate your time. Hopefully answered some questions for you guys and it was a helpful experience. Thank you.